Hey, what's up YouTube? This is Jordan from Team Delirium. So today I'm going to be talking about Upstart Goblin. The reason I'm going to be talking about this is because it's been played a lot recently. It's seeing a lot of play mainly because of Patrick Hoban, who has popularized it in his Mermail deck, his Dragoonity Ruler deck, and all that kind of stuff. So Patrick Hoban absolutely loves this card, to the extent where people have actually made a term for him called Hobaning, which is basically when you're running Upstart Goblins or Reckless Greeds within your deck, you are Hobaning. So I think that's a bit ridiculous that it's gotten to the point where someone is known that much for using a single card. But I'm going to talk about why Upstart Goblin isn't usable in every deck, and that yes, Patrick Hoban uses it in all of his decks, but that's because all of the decks he's using fit the criteria for this card to fit. So I'm going to talk about what that criteria entails, how I view the card, and also, I guess along with that, I'm also going to talk about Reckless Greed, and why I believe that Upstart Goblin is just a faster version of this card, Pot of Duality. So let's begin. So Upstart Goblin is a very good card. Everybody should know what it does. It's just draw one card and give your opponent 1,000 life points. You would think, because of how generic it is, that it's usable within every deck, but I would argue against that. And the reason for that is that I believe that Upstart Goblin only fits into decks that have a lot of recurable damage. A good example of something like this is Dark Worlds, because they have a revivable boss monster, namely Grapha, and when Gates is on the field, he has 3,000 attack, which is perfect because with Upstart Goblin, you can assume that you're going to give your opponent at least 2,000, if not 3,000 attack by activating your Upstart Goblins. So basically you need a boss monster like Grapha that is going to be able to take away that damage just as quickly. So obviously, like I've said twice before, Grapha is a great example of this. Another good example is the Dragoonity Rulers, because they have the Dragon Rulers, which are recurable boss monsters from the grave, so they can easily get over the damage that they can easily get over the life that you give your opponent with Upstart Goblin, because the majority of them are 2,000 plus attack and you can revive multiple a turn. So that is obviously very good. So yeah, that is my thought on Upstart Goblin. Now, I guess I should explain why I believe that Upstart Goblin is just a faster Pot of Duality. So first of all, I'm going to explain why I believe that Upstart Goblin is Pot of Duality. So Upstart Goblin has the exact same deck cycling as Pot of Duality. So you activate a card, you get one card in return, which is exactly the same as Pot of Duality. The difference, obviously, is that you can still special summon, but the downside is that you give your opponent 1,000 life points. So the bonus is that it's faster. You can activate multiple in a turn. You can still special summon the turn you use it, but it's not as consistent because you can't look at the top 3 cards of your deck. So I believe that this card is made more for combo-based aggressive decks like Dark Worlds, Dragoonity Rulers, possibly Mermails, anything along those lines that has the ability to put out a lot of recurable damage within a single turn. So that's why I believe that Upstart Goblin is similar to Pot of Duality. In my opinion, Pot of Duality is a slower version of Upstart, because this works both ways. So Pot of Duality is like an Upstart in that it gives you the same 1-for-1 deck cycling, and that it the difference is that you cannot special summon. You can only activate 1 per turn, but the plus side is that you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck and add 1 to hand. So I believe that this card, in comparison to Upstart Goblin, is better used in decks that don't special summon a lot, decks that don't have a lot of recurable damage, and things that need to get to their search cards. Basically, this is in decks like slow control decks that need consistency. That is what I believe. So that is the difference between these two cards. They're very similar, but they're also very different. So I believe that both have their place in specific decks, but neither should be used in every deck. So that is my views on Upstart Goblin. Next is Reckless Greed. So Reckless Greed is another generic draw card like Upstart Goblin. The difference is that it's a trap card and allows you to draw 2 cards per turn, but you can't, it allows you to draw 2 cards the turn you activate it, but you can't draw during your draw phase for the next 2 turns. So I believe this card in particular is only good in decks that can survive not having their draw phase for the next 2 turns. So good examples of decks that can do this are decks that can create their own draw phase, basically. Decks that can create their own draw power. So Dark Worlds, once again, is a wonderful example of this. Because they have the Gates of the Dark World, they have Dark World Dealings, they have Drag Down into the Grave. They also run Upstart Goblin, as I've said before, and they have Brow. They just have so many different options to obtain draw power within that deck that using the Upstart or using the Reckless Greeds doesn't hinder them in any way. They're always going to get that draw whether they get it during their draw phase or not. So that is a really good example of a deck that can use Reckless Greed. Another really good example of a deck that can use Reckless Greed is Prophecies. And the reason I say that is that Prophecies essentially has 2 standby phases. 2 draw phases. The regular draw phase and the standby phase where they activate Tower to recycle a spellbook back to their deck, and then they draw a card. So when you activate Reckless Greed, you're basically getting your 2 draws for the next turn that you would have gotten for your draw phase. But then you're also still getting all your draws off of Spellbook Tower. So that's another deck that can really utilize Reckless Greed. I don't believe this card fits in every deck. I believe that they need to have some sort of way of surviving, whether it be through search power, whether it be through special summons. They need to have a way of maintaining advantage during the 2 turns that they cannot get their draw phase. So this card, once again, does not fit in every deck, but there are a few select decks that can run it, like Dark Worlds and Spellbooks. So the best deck, obviously, for both of these cards is Dark Worlds. And the reason for that is that Dark Worlds has a lot of recurable damage, which meets the criteria for Upstart Goblin. It also is a combo-based deck, and it's an aggressive combo-based deck, which is the other criteria for Upstart Goblin. And then it also creates its own draw power, so Reckless Greed is really good in the deck as well. So those are my thoughts on Upstart Goblin and Reckless Greed. If you have different opinions or you just like to share your opinion, remember to comment below and remember to like and subscribe. Also, just a small update. I have just ordered a tripod, so once I get that, I will be starting my Thunder Theory series, and then you won't get the shakiness that you've seen within this video. I just wanted to do a really quick video explaining my thoughts on these 2 cards because they've been seeing so much popularity and so much play lately. So, yeah. Anyways, guys, peace out.